Welcome to His Stories, the place where real men's truths finally get told. If you're new here, you're in good company. This is where we strip away the masks, cut through the noise, and share the raw, unfiltered experiences that shape us as men in America. Today's story comes from a brother who learned that sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones plotting against you from day one. Sometimes trust is a luxury you can't afford, even with those you call family. Let's dive in. Trust is earned in drops, but lost in buckets. My grandmother used to say that to me when I was young, sitting on her front porch in Birmingham, watching the world go by. I carried those words with me for 70 years, thinking I understood what they meant. But sometimes, fellas, sometimes you discover that some people never intended to earn your trust in the first place. Sometimes you learn that while you were busy being loyal, others were busy being liars from the very beginning. The day I found out my best friend and my wife had been playing me for a fool since before we even got married was a Thursday. I remember because it was the day I was supposed to go golfing with Daniel, same as we'd done every Thursday for the past 15 years. Instead, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, staring at photographs that made my stomach turn. Twice 27 years of marriage, 27 years of friendship that started before we were married, all of it built on a lie so deep, so calculated that it took a private investigator to uncover what should have been obvious to a man who thought he knew the people closest to him. The pictures showed them together at a hotel, not just any hotel, but the same one where Lisa and I had spent our honeymoon. They'd been meeting there for decades, using our sacred place as their playground. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the stack of receipts that showed this had been going on since 1995. 2 years before Lisa and I got married, my best friend Daniel had been sleeping with my wife since we were dating, and somehow I'd been the last to know. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your life, hit subscribe and drop your city in the comments. Where you watching from? Let's see where our brotherhood stretches, because I got a feeling this story is going to cut deeper than most of us want to admit. Backstory/roots. My name is Henry Travis, and I'm 70 years old now. Born in 1954 in Birmingham, Alabama, to parents who believed in hard work, honest living, and treating people the way you want to be treated. My daddy was a steel worker, my mama was a school teacher, and they raised me to believe that your word was your bond and loyalty was everything. Growing up in the South, in the 60s and 70s taught me about resilience, about standing up for what's right even when it's hard, and about the importance of community. Our neighborhood was tight-knit, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, where you could leave your doors unlocked and trust your neighbors to look out for your children. Henry, my dad used to tell me as we worked in the garage on Saturday mornings, there's 3 things a man needs to protect: his family, his reputation, and his peace of mind. Everything else can be replaced, but those 3 things are what make life worth living. I took those words to heart, made it through high school, earned a scholarship to study engineering at Auburn University. And by the time I was 25, I was working for a major construction firm in Atlanta, worked my way up from junior engineer to project manager, then started my own consulting business when I was 35. Nothing fancy, mind you, but honest work that paid honest money. I designed commercial buildings, shopping centers, office complexes, had a reputation for being thorough, reliable, and fair. By the time I was 40, I owned my own firm with 12 employees and contracts all over the Southeast. The thing about growing up the way I did is that you learn to value relationships over everything else. Money comes and goes, jobs change, but the people who matter to you, the ones who stick by you through thick and thin, those relationships are what make life meaningful. That's why when I moved to Atlanta in 1997, I was grateful to meet Daniel Matthews at a professional networking event. I was 43, established in my career, but new to the big city social scene. He was 35, a sales manager for a medical supply company, ambitious and charming, with the kind of personality that made you feel like you'd known him your whole life. We met at one of those awkward cocktail parties where everybody's trying to make connections. I was standing by the bar nursing a beer and wondering why I'd wasted my evening when this white guy walks up and says, "You look about as thrilled to be here as I am." That was Daniel. Tall, sandy-haired, with an easy smile and a joke for every situation. We ended up talking for 2 hours, discovered we both loved golf, both were Auburn fans, both had grown up with fathers who taught them that handshake deals meant more than signed contracts. You know what, Henry, he said as the party was winding down, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. He was quoting Casablanca, one of my favorite movies. In that moment, I thought I'd found a kindred spirit, a brother from another mother who understood what loyalty and friendship really meant. How wrong I was. Daniel and I became fast friends. Golf every Thursday, football games on Sundays, fishing trips, family barbecues when I started having them. When I bought my second house in Atlanta, he helped me move. When his father died in 1998, I was at the funeral. When my business started really taking off, he was genuinely happy for my success. But here's what I didn't know. He'd already met Lisa. He'd been seeing her for 2 years by the time we became friends. And when he decided to introduce us in the summer of 1997, it wasn't because he wanted me to be happy. It was because he wanted to have his cake and eat it too. Lisa Harrison was 28 when Daniel introduced us at a company picnic in the summer of 1997, just a few months after Daniel and I had become friends. She was working as a marketing coordinator for a telecommunications firm, smart and ambitious with blonde hair and green eyes that seemed to light up when she smiled. She had that southern charm that could make you feel like the most important person in the room. Henry, I want you to meet someone special, Daniel said, walking up to me with Lisa on his arm at the company picnic. This is Lisa Harrison. Lisa, this is my friend Henry Travis, the man I've been telling you about. The way he said it like he'd been talking about me made me feel important, special, like he'd been planning this introduction for a while. So you're the famous Henry, Lisa said, extending her hand. Daniel talks about you constantly. I was beginning to think you were imaginary. She laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that made you want to hear it again. Sweet and genuine, or so I thought. What I didn't know was that this whole scene was orchestrated. Lisa and Daniel had been together since 1995, and this introduction was their way of providing cover for their ongoing relationship. If Daniel's new friend Henry was dating Lisa, no one would suspect anything when they spent time together. We talked for an hour at that picnic about work, about Atlanta, about our dreams and plans for the future. She was easy to talk to, intelligent, funny in a way that didn't try too hard. When she mentioned she'd grown up in Macon, we discovered we had similar backgrounds, similar values. I can't believe Daniel's been hiding you from me, I said as the afternoon wore on. Actually, she said, glancing over at Daniel, who was manning the grill, he's been telling me about you for months. I think he's been trying to play matchmaker. The idea that Daniel had been thinking about my happiness, looking out for my love life, made me appreciate him even more. Here was a friend who cared enough about my personal life to introduce me to quality women. That's the kind of loyalty you can't buy. Lisa and I started dating 2 weeks later. I took her to dinner at a nice restaurant in Buckhead, and we talked until they turned the lights up and started putting chairs on tables. She was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. Smart, beautiful, ambitious, but also grounded in the kind of values I'd been raised with. My mama always told me, she said over dessert, that you can tell everything you need to know about a man by how he treats people who can't do anything for him. Smart woman, I said. What's her verdict on me? Well, you were polite to the hostess, patient with the waiter, and you haven't checked your phone once all evening. I'd say you're passing with flying colors. That was Lisa in the early days. Observant, appreciative, seemingly genuine in her affection. She made me feel like I was worth her attention, like I was lucky to be sitting across from her. What I didn't know was that she was already practiced at this performance. She'd been perfecting the art of making men feel special for years, first with Daniel, now with me. The difference was that Daniel knew it was an act, and I believed it was real. We dated for 14 months before I knew I wanted to marry her. She fit into my life seamlessly, got along with my friends, charmed my coworkers, and seemed to genuinely enjoy spending time with me. More importantly, she and Daniel got along great, which mattered to me because I wanted my wife and my best friend to be comfortable with each other. She's perfect for you, Henry, Daniel told me one Thursday after golf, about 8 months into our relationship. I've never seen you this happy. You think so? I know so. She's beautiful, she's smart, and she laughs at your terrible jokes. What more could you ask for? What more indeed? Here was a woman who seemed to love me for who I was, and a best friend who was genuinely happy for my happiness. I felt like the luckiest man in Atlanta. Little did I know that after our golf games, Daniel would often go straight to Lisa's apartment. While I was driving home, thinking about how blessed I was to have such good people in my life, they were laughing about how easy it was to fool me. I proposed to Lisa on New Year's Eve, 1998, at a party Daniel was hosting at his house. Dropped to one knee right there in his living room, surrounded by all our friends, and asked her to marry me. Yes, she said, throwing her arms around my neck. Yes, yes, yes. The room erupted in cheers, and Daniel was the first to congratulate us, bear hugging me so hard he nearly knocked me over. I'm so happy for you both, he said, and there were actual tears in his eyes. You deserve all the happiness in the world, Henry. Those tears were probably real. He was happy. Happy that his plan had worked, happy that he could continue seeing Lisa while having me as cover, happy that he'd found the perfect way to have everything he wanted without having to choose. We planned the wedding for September 1999. Lisa wanted something elegant, but not too big. About 150 people at the country club where Daniel was a member. He insisted on being my best man, and I couldn't imagine anyone else standing beside me on the most important day of my life. You sure you want to saddle yourself with this ugly bastard? Daniel joked during his best man speech at the rehearsal dinner, because I'll take him off your hands if you change your mind. Everyone laughed, including Lisa, who blew me a kiss from the head table. But looking back now, I realized Daniel wasn't entirely joking. In his mind, he probably was taking her off my hands every chance he got. The wedding was perfect. September in Georgia, crisp air and early fall colors, Lisa radiant in her white dress, Daniel steady and supportive beside me as I said my vows. When the preacher pronounced us husband and wife, I felt like I'd won the lottery. The honeymoon was at a resort in Savannah, 2 weeks of pure bliss. Lisa was affectionate, attentive, seemingly as happy as I was to start our new life together. We talked about our future, about kids, about growing old together. I can't wait to see what our life looks like in 20 years, she said one evening as we walked on the beach. Hopefully I'll still be good looking enough to keep your attention, I joke. Henry Travis, she said, stopping to look at me in the moonlight. You're going to be handsome when you're 80. How was I supposed to know she was lying? How was I supposed to know that while she was making promises to me, she was already keeping promises to someone else? The first few years of marriage were everything I'd hoped for. We bought a house in Marietta, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial with a big backyard where we planned to raise our children. Lisa kept working, but she also threw herself into making our house a home, decorating and entertaining and creating the kind of domestic happiness I'd always dreamed of. Daniel was a constant presence in our lives. He'd come over for dinner at least once a week, join us for barbecues and holiday celebrations, vacation with us at the beach every summer. The three of us became inseparable, and I loved having my wife and my best friend get along so well. We're lucky, I told Lisa one night after Daniel had gone home following another evening of dinner and card games. A lot of wives don't like their husband's friends. Daniel's not just your friend, she said, cleaning up the dinner dishes. He's family. Family. That's exactly how I felt about him. Daniel was the brother I'd never had, and Lisa was the wife I'd always wanted. Together, the three of us formed a perfect little unit, supporting each other, enjoying each other's company, building memories that I thought would last forever. If someone had told me then that these two people I loved most in the world were betraying me, had been betraying me from the very beginning, I would have called them crazy. I would have defended both of them with my life. Because that's what loyalty looks like. That's what trust feels like. And that's exactly what they were counting on. Looking back now, I can see the signs were there from the beginning. But when you trust people completely, When you believe in their character, absolutely, you have a way of explaining away the things that don't quite make sense. Like how Lisa always seemed to know what Daniel was thinking before he said it. How they had inside jokes I didn't understand. How comfortable they were with each other, finishing each other's sentences, sharing looks across the dinner table that lasted just a beat too long. At the time, I thought it was wonderful that my wife and my best friend had such a good relationship. I thought it meant I'd chosen well. That both of these people were genuinely good souls who naturally connected with other good souls. I was an idiot. The first real red flag came about 2 years into our marriage. I was working late on a project, trying to finish some blueprints before a morning deadline, when I realized I'd left my calculator at home. I drove back to the house around 9 o'clock, planning to grab the calculator and head back to the office. When I pulled into the driveway, Daniel's car was there. That wasn't unusual. He came over for dinner at least once a week. But when I walked in the front door, the house was dark except for a light in the kitchen. "Lisa," I called out. "Daniel?" "In here," Lisa called back, but her voice sounded strange. Breathless, I walked into the kitchen to find him sitting at the table with coffee cups, looking perfectly normal except for the fact that Lisa's hair was messed up and Daniel's shirt was wrinkled. "Hey, buddy," Daniel said, standing up quickly. "Didn't expect you back so soon." "Had to grab my calculator," I said, looking between them. "Everything okay? You both look a little flustered." "Oh, we were just moving some furniture around upstairs," Lisa said, smoothing down her hair. Daniel was helping me rearrange the guest bedroom. Made sense. Lisa was always redecorating something and Daniel was always willing to help with heavy lifting. But something felt off. The energy in the room was strange, like I'd interrupted something. "At 9 o'clock at night?" I asked. "You know how I get when I have an idea," Lisa said, laughing. Poor Daniel. "I called him over here right after dinner because I couldn't wait until tomorrow." Daniel nodded, but he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Your wife is very persuasive when she wants something." I grabbed my calculator and headed back to work, but the whole drive to the office, something nagged at me. If they'd been moving furniture, why weren't they sweaty? Why did the guest bedroom look exactly the same when I'd glanced in there? Why had Lisa's lipstick been smudged? But I pushed those thoughts away. These were the two people I trusted most in the world. If I couldn't trust them, who could I trust? The second incident happened about 6 months later. Lisa had started going to a book club on Thursday evenings, the same night Daniel and I played golf. It was perfect timing, actually, because it meant we could both pursue our hobbies without feeling guilty about leaving the other person alone. One Thursday, our golf game got rained out, so I decided to surprise Lisa by picking her up from book club and taking her out for dessert. She'd mentioned they met at Sarah Peterson's house in Dunwoody, so I drove over there around 8:30 when the meeting should have been ending. No cars in the driveway, no lights on in the house, no book club. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to figure out what was going on. Had Lisa gotten the date wrong? Had the meeting been moved? I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. When Lisa got home around 10 o'clock, I was waiting in the living room. "How was book club?" I asked. "Oh, you know how those women can talk," she said, not quite looking at me. "We ended up discussing the book for 3 hours. That's funny, because I drove by Sarah Peterson's house to surprise you and nobody was there." The look that crossed Lisa's face was like watching someone get caught in a lie, but instead of coming clean, she doubled down.
"Oh, honey, we moved the meeting to Jennifer's house at the last minute. Sarah's air conditioning broke and it was just too hot. Why didn't you call to let me know? I'm sorry, baby. You were golfing and I didn't want to interrupt. Besides, my phone died halfway through the meeting." Every explanation made sense individually. Air conditioners break, meetings get moved, phone batteries die. But put together, they felt like a script she'd rehearsed. "Which book are you reading this month?" I asked. "But the book club, what book did you discuss for 3 hours?" She hesitated for just a second too long. "Pride and Prejudice. Again. You know how Jennifer loves Jane Austen." I let it go because I wanted to believe her. Because the alternative that the woman I'd been married to for 3 years was lying to my face about where she'd been for 3 hours was too painful to consider. But I started paying more attention after that. Started noticing how Lisa's Thursday night book club meetings seemed to run longer and longer. How she'd come home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. How she'd started doing her hair and makeup before book club, which seemed excessive for sitting around talking about novels with other women. And I started noticing how Daniel was sometimes unavailable on Thursday nights, how he'd cancel our golf games at the last minute, claiming work emergencies or family obligations, how he'd seem distracted when we did get together, checking his phone constantly, making excuses to leave early. The third major incident happened on our 5th wedding anniversary. Lisa and I were supposed to go out for a romantic dinner, just the two of us to celebrate. But that afternoon, she got a call that sent her into a panic. "My sister's in the hospital," she said, hanging up the phone with tears in her eyes. "Car accident in Nashville. I have to go." "I'll come with you," I said immediately. "No, honey, you don't need to do that. It's a 6-hour drive and you have that big presentation tomorrow. I'll drive up tonight, see how she's doing, and probably be back by Sunday." It made sense. My presentation was important and Lisa was close to her sister, but something about the whole situation felt wrong. "What hospital?" I asked. "Vanderbilt," she said, already moving toward the bedroom to pack. "I'm going to throw some things in a bag and hit the road." I tried calling the hospital later that night to check on Lisa's sister, to send flowers, to do something supportive. Vanderbilt University Medical Center had no record of any accident victim matching her sister's name or description. When I confronted Lisa about it when she returned Sunday night, she looked at me like I was crazy. "You called the hospital? Henry, that's embarrassing. What if someone thought you were some kind of stalker?" "I was trying to send flowers to your sister." "Well, they transferred her to a smaller hospital outside the city. That's probably why Vanderbilt didn't have any record." "Which hospital?" I I don't remember the name, some regional place. Honestly, Henry, I was so worried about Rachel that I wasn't paying attention to details like that. Again, reasonable explanations, but they were adding up to a pattern I didn't want to see. I started noticing other things too. How Lisa would get text messages late at night and claim they were from work, but she'd smile at the screen in a way that didn't look professional. How she'd sometimes mention conversations with Daniel that I'd never heard about. How our credit card statements showed charges at restaurants I'd never been to, always for amounts that suggested dinner for two. When I asked about those charges, Lisa always had explanations. Work lunches with clients, coffee dates with girlfriends, shopping trips where she'd grabbed a quick bite. All perfectly reasonable, all impossible to verify without seeming paranoid. But the biggest red flag was how comfortable Lisa and Daniel were with each other. Too comfortable. They'd touch each other's arms when they talked. They'd lean in close to whispered jokes. They'd exchange meaningful looks when they thought I wasn't watching. "You two seem to really get along," I said to Lisa one night after Daniel had left. "Well, he's your best friend," she said. "It's important to me that we have a good relationship. Sometimes it seems like you two are closer than he and I are." She laughed and kissed me on the cheek. "Don't be silly, honey. You're just imagining things." But I wasn't imagining things. I was seeing exactly what was happening. I just didn't want to believe it. I hired a private investigator in our 20th year of marriage, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know. The not knowing was eating me alive, making me question my own sanity, making me wonder if I was the kind of paranoid husband who saw betrayal where none existed. "Mr. Travis," the investigator said when I met with him in his office, "I want to be sure you understand what you're asking for. Sometimes the truth is more painful than the uncertainty." "I need to know," I said. "One way or the other, I need to know." 4 weeks later, he called me to come back to his office. 4 weeks of surveillance, background checks, and careful investigation. 4 weeks of hoping he'd tell me I was wrong, that my wife was faithful and my friend was loyal. Instead, he handed me a manila envelope that contained the end of everything I'd believed about my life. The photographs were damning enough. Lisa and Daniel entering hotel rooms together. Lisa and Daniel kissing in restaurant parking lots. Lisa and Daniel walking hand in hand through parks where they thought no one would recognize them. But the real gut punch was the timeline the investigator had put together. Phone records, credit card receipts, hotel registrations, restaurant reservations. A paper trail that showed this affair had been going on for years. Not months, not even just a few years since we'd been married. This had been happening since before Lisa and I were married. Mr. Travis, the investigator said gently, I need you to understand what you're looking at. Based on the evidence I've gathered, your wife and Mr. Matthews have been involved since at least 1995. That's 2 years before you and your wife were married, and 2 years before you even met Mr. Matthews. The room started spinning. 1995. That was before Daniel and I became friends. That was before their first meeting at the company picnic. That was before everything I thought I knew about how my life had unfolded. Are you saying they knew each other before I met either of them? I'm saying they were romantically involved before you met either of them. The hotel records show they were meeting regularly at the Marriott on Peachtree from 1995 through 1997. The same hotel where your wife told you she'd never been before your honeymoon. My honeymoon, the place I'd thought was special to Lisa and me, our secret romantic getaway. They'd been using it as their meeting place for years before I ever set foot in the building. There's more, the investigator said, pulling out another folder. Bank records show that in 1996, Mr. Matthews made a significant cash withdrawal the same day your wife paid off her student loans. Credit card records show they were taking trips together, dinners for two, hotel rooms booked under his name, but charged for double occupancy. I stared at the evidence spread across his desk, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't just an affair. This was a conspiracy, a long-term deception that had encompassed my entire marriage and my entire friendship with Daniel. The introduction at the company picnic, I said slowly. That was all planned? It appears so. Based on what I've found, they'd been together for 2 years by then. The introduction seems to have been designed to provide cover for their ongoing relationship. Think about it, Mr. Travis. If your best friend introduces you to the woman who becomes your wife, no one suspects anything inappropriate when they spend time together. They can be alone together, go to lunch, talk on the phone, even travel together for family events, and it all looks perfectly innocent. The investigator was right. How many times had Lisa and Daniel been alone together over the years? How many lunches, how many conversations, how many opportunities for them to be together while I was at work, while I was traveling, while I was living my life completely oblivious to what was happening right under my nose? The Thursday night book club, I said, doesn't exist, never existed. Your wife has been meeting Mr. Matthews at various hotels every Thursday night for the past 15 years. Thursday nights, the same night Daniel and I played golf, the same night I was conveniently out of the house for 3 hours. They'd planned it perfectly, coordinated their deception so that they could be together while I was pursuing my own hobby, completely unaware that my absence was exactly what they needed. How long have you been playing golf with Mr. Matthews on Thursday nights? The investigator asked. About 15 years, I said, and then the full horror of it hit me. He suggested it, said we needed a regular guys' night, something to look forward to every week. I suspect that was about the same time your wife started her book club. They'd been playing me like a fiddle. Daniel had suggested our weekly golf game, not because he wanted to spend time with me, but because he wanted me out of the house so he could spend time with my wife. And I'd been grateful for his suggestion, thankful to have such a thoughtful friend who cared about our friendship. There's something else, the investigator said, his voice gentler now. The financial records show some irregularities that you might want to have your accountant look at. What kind of irregularities? Transactions from your joint account with your wife, cash withdrawals, transfers to accounts I can't trace. It appears your wife has been moving money around without your knowledge. My own money, being used to fund her affair with my best friend. I thought about all the times Lisa had insisted on handling our finances, how she'd volunteered to pay the bills and manage our investments, how grateful I'd been to have a wife who took care of those tedious details. How much money are we talking about? Over the past 10 years, approximately $400,000, 0 cents in unexplained withdrawals and transfers, $400,000. Money I'd earned, money I'd saved for our future, our retirement, the family we'd talked about starting but never did. Money that had been funding hotel rooms and romantic dinners and trips for two people who were laughing at me behind my back. I drove home in a daze, the manila envelope sitting on the passenger seat like a bomb waiting to explode. 25 years of marriage, 27 years of friendship, all of it built on lies. I'd been living in a fantasy, married to a woman who'd been cheating on me since before we were married, best friends with a man who'd been plotting against me from the day we met. When I got home, Lisa was in the kitchen, making dinner, humming to herself like she didn't have a care in the world. She looked up when I walked in, smiling the same sweet smile that had charmed me for 25 years. How was your day, honey? How was my day? My day had been spent discovering that my entire life was a lie, that the two people I trusted most in the world had been systematically betraying me for over 2 decades. We need to talk, I said, setting the envelope on the kitchen counter. What's that? Evidence. The color drained from her face, but she tried to maintain her composure. Evidence of what? Of your affair with Daniel, of the fact that you've been stealing money from our joint account, of the fact that you've been lying to me since before we were married. She opened her mouth to deny it, to spin another story, to gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. But then she saw the photograph spilling out of the envelope, and she knew the game was over. Henry, I can explain. Explain what? How you and Daniel planned this whole thing from the beginning. How you let me believe you were meeting for the first time when you'd already been sleeping together for 2 years. How you've been using our marriage as cover for your affair. She started crying then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, anger that she'd been caught, fear about what this meant for her comfortable life. It's not what you think, she said. It's exactly what I think. You and Daniel have been playing me for a fool for 25 years. You let me believe he was my friend when he was really your lover. You let me believe you loved me when you were really just using me. I do love you, Henry. You love my money, you love my house, you love the security I provide, but you don't love me. That's when she changed tactics. The tears stopped, and her face got hard in a way I'd never seen before. You can't prove anything, she said. I gestured to the photograph spread across the counter. I think I can. Those could be doctored, and even if they're real, so what? Divorce me, take half of everything, and start over. But if you think you're going to embarrass me, if you think you're going to destroy my reputation, you're wrong. I'm not trying to destroy anything. I just want out of this marriage. Well, you can't have out, not without consequences. What's that supposed to mean? That's when she dropped the bomb that would haunt me for the next year. It means that if you file for divorce, if you try to make this public, I'll tell everyone you've been abusing me. I'll tell the police, I'll tell our friends, I'll tell anyone who'll listen that you've been hitting me for years, and I finally got the courage to leave. The words hit me like a physical blow. You'd lie about something like that? I've been lying about everything else. What's one more lie? Lisa, that's not just a lie, that's a crime. False accusations can destroy a man's life. Then don't make me use them. Keep your mouth shut, give me what I want in the divorce, and we can end this quietly. I stared at this woman I'd been married to for 25 years, this woman I'd loved and trusted and built a life with, and realized I'd never known her at all. The sweet, charming woman I'd fallen in love with was a mask, a performance designed to trap me in a marriage that benefited her and her lover. What do you want? Half of everything, the house, the business, the retirement accounts, everything. And I want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement that says you'll never talk about the reason for our divorce. And then I start making phone calls. And you know what happens to men who get accused of domestic violence, Henry? Even if you're innocent, even if you can prove you're innocent, the accusation follows you forever. Is your pride worth that? It wasn't pride, it was justice, it was truth. It was the principle that people shouldn't be allowed to destroy your life and then demand payment for the privilege. But she was right about the accusations. In today's climate, an accusation of domestic violence could end my career, destroy my reputation, and make it impossible for me to start over. Even if I was eventually cleared, the damage would be done. I need time to think about this. You have 24 hours, she said. After that, I start making my calls. That night, I sat in my study, surrounded by 25 years of memories. Wedding photos where Lisa and Daniel stood side by side, both of them smiling at the camera while sharing the secret that I was too naive to see. Vacation pictures where they managed to stand close together while making it look innocent. Christmas morning shots where they exchanged meaningful glances over gifts they'd probably picked out together. My entire marriage had been a lie, and now my wife was threatening to destroy me if I didn't pay her for the privilege of ending it. I called Daniel the next morning. After 27 years of friendship, after all the golf games and dinners and shared memories, I figured he owed me at least a conversation. Henry, he said when he picked up the phone, and I could hear the guilt in his voice, I've been expecting your call. Abby, now. Lisa told me about your conversation last night. Of course she had. They probably spent the evening planning their next move, figuring out how to minimize the damage to their lives while maximizing the damage to mine. So you know I know. 27 years, Daniel, 27 years of friendship, and this is how it ends. There was a long pause before he answered, I never meant for it to happen, Henry. Which part? Sleeping with my wife for 29 years or getting caught? Looted any of it. It got complicated. Complicated? You were already seeing Lisa when you met me. You introduced me to a woman you were sleeping with, watched me fall in love with her, stood up at my wedding as my best man, and spent the next 25 years helping her betray me. What part of that was complicated? You don't understand. Lisa and I, we have history. We were together for 2 years before I met you, and we never really ended things. When she decided she wanted to get married, to settle down and have security, I thought introducing her to you was the best thing for everyone. The best thing for everyone? What about what was best for me? You were happy, Henry. You had a beautiful wife, a successful business, a good life. What you didn't know wasn't hurting you. What I didn't know wasn't hurting me. That's what my best friend said about 29 years of betrayal. Like I was a child who needed to be protected from the truth about how the world really worked. Did you ever care about me at all? Was any of our friendship real? Another long pause. I care about you, Henry. That's why this is so hard. If you cared about me, you wouldn't have been sleeping with my wife for 25 years. It wasn't supposed to go on this long. We kept saying we'd end it, that we'd tell you the truth, but the longer it went on, the harder it got. So you decided to just keep lying forever? We decided to keep everyone happy. You were happy with Lisa. Lisa was happy with both of us. I was happy having you as a friend and her as my lover. It worked. It worked. Daniel, it was based on a lie. Everything we've shared for the past 27 years has been built on deception. But you were happy, he insisted. Until you found out you were happy. Doesn't that count for something? The twisted logic of it made me sick. In Daniel's mind, as long as I didn't know I was being betrayed, the betrayal didn't matter. As long as I was smiling in the photographs, laughing at his jokes, enjoying the life I thought I had, the fact that it was all based on lies was irrelevant. What about now? I asked. What happens now that I know? Now we figure out how to move forward. Lisa wants a divorce, obviously, and I think that's probably best for everyone. And you, what do you want? I want to marry her, Henry. I've wanted to marry her for 29 years, but she chose security over love. Now that she's ready to choose love, I want to be there for her. Choose love. Like what they'd been doing behind my back was some great romantic gesture instead of a systematic betrayal that had lasted nearly 3 decades. So you get the girl, she gets half my money, and I get destroyed if I don't go along quietly. Nobody wants to destroy you, Henry. We just want to move on with our lives. By threatening to accuse me of domestic violence if I don't cooperate. That's Lisa's insurance policy. She's scared, Henry. She's worried you're going to try to hurt her reputation, maybe even get violent. Daniel, you've known me for 27 years. Have you ever seen me raise my voice to a woman, much less lay a hand on one? No, but people do unexpected things when they're angry. Because I might theoretically get angry about being betrayed by my wife and my best friend. She's justified in threatening to destroy my life with false accusations. She's just protecting herself. The woman who'd been stealing my money and sleeping with my best friend for 25 years was protecting herself from me, the man who'd been faithful, loyal, and trusting throughout our entire marriage and friendship. I want you to listen to me very carefully, Daniel. I've never hit a woman in my life. I've never threatened a woman in my life, and I'm not going to start now. But if Lisa follows through on her threat to make false accusations against me, I will spend every dime I have to prove she's lying. And when I do, she won't just lose the divorce settlement. She'll lose her freedom. Henry, don't make this harder than it has to be. I'm not making anything hard. You and Lisa created this situation. You and Lisa chose to betray me for 25 years. You and Lisa decided to threaten me when you got caught. I'm just trying to figure out how to survive the explosion you've set off in my life. I hung up on him then because there was nothing else to say. The man I'd considered my best friend for 27 years had just confirmed that he'd been actively participating in a conspiracy to deceive me. And now he wanted me to be grateful for the privilege of being discarded quietly. That afternoon, I met with my lawyer, Rebecca Chen, a sharp woman who specialized in complex divorce cases. I laid out the whole situation for her, the affair, the financial theft, the threats of false accusations. Mr. Travis, she said after reviewing the evidence, this is going to be expensive and emotionally brutal. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared to fight for the truth. The truth doesn't always win in divorce court. And with your wife threatening false accusations, we need to be very careful about how we proceed. What are my options? You can give her what she wants and walk away quietly. You'll lose half your assets, but you'll avoid the risk of criminal accusations and a public trial. Or we fight. We present the evidence of adultery and financial theft. We demand a favorable settlement, and we prepare for her to follow through on her threats. If she does accuse you of domestic violence, we'll have to defend against those charges while also pursuing the divorce. Lark, what would you do? She leaned back in her chair and studied me for a moment. Can I speak frankly? I've been practicing family law for 20 years, and I've seen this pattern before. Women who are willing to make false accusations of domestic violence usually follow through on their threats, especially when they have a lot to lose financially. Your wife knows that even if the accusations don't stick, they'll damage your reputation and make it harder for you to fight the divorce. Do you think I should give in to her demands? Hmm. I think you should consider what matters most to you. Is it worth risking your reputation, your business, and possibly your freedom to prove a point? That night, I sat in my study again, trying to figure out what mattered most to me. Was it the money? I'd lost money before and made it back. Was it my reputation? That was harder to rebuild, but not impossible. Was it the principle of the thing? The idea that people shouldn't be allowed to betray you and then profit from that betrayal? Or was it something deeper? The need to stop being a victim, to stop letting other people control my life, to finally stand up for myself, even if it cost me everything. I called Rebecca the next morning. "We fight," I said. "Yeah, sure." "I'm sure. Lisa and Daniel have been controlling this situation from the beginning. They controlled when the affair started, they controlled how long it lasted, they controlled when I found out about it, and now they want to control how it ends. I'm done being a puppet in their show." Okay, but we do this smart. We document everything, we build an airtight case, and we prepare for the worst. We filed for divorce 3 days later. The grounds were adultery and financial misconduct, and we asked for a division of assets that reflected Lisa's betrayal and theft. We also filed a motion to freeze all joint accounts to prevent further unauthorized withdrawal. Lisa's response was swift and predictable. That afternoon, she called the police and reported that I had been physically abusing her for years. She showed them photographs of bruises that she claimed I had inflicted. She presented a diary documenting years of alleged violence. She had witness statements from friends who claimed I had a history of controlling and aggressive behavior. I was arrested at my office in front of my employees and clients, handcuffed, read my rights, and booked into the county jail on charges of aggravated domestic violence. The mugshot made the front page of the local newspaper. The story described me as a successful businessman who had been secretly abusing his wife for years. It detailed the brave woman who had finally found the courage to come forward and seek justice. I spent 3 days in jail before my lawyer could get me out on bail. 3 days of being treated like a violent criminal. 3 days of listening to other inmates talk about what they'd like to do to men who hit women. When I finally made bail, the damage was already done. My business phone was ringing constantly with clients canceling contracts. My employees were getting harassed by reporters. My neighbors were looking at me like I was a monster. The trial lasted 6 months. 6 months of character assassination, of having my entire life picked apart in public, of watching Lisa play the role of the terrified victim while Daniel sat in the gallery offering her emotional support. But Rebecca was as good as her reputation. She systematically dismantled Lisa's case, proving that the photographs of bruises were from a minor car accident she'd had 3 months earlier. She showed that the diary entries were written in the same ink and the same handwriting style, suggesting they'd all been created at the same time rather than over several years. She presented evidence that the witness statements contained details that contradicted Lisa's own testimony. Most importantly, she presented the evidence of Lisa's affair and financial theft, painting a picture of a woman who was willing to lie about anything to protect her interests. The domestic violence charges were dropped after 4 months when the prosecution realized they couldn't prove their case. But the divorce trial continued, and it was brutal. Lisa's lawyer painted me as a controlling husband who had driven his wife into the arms of another man. My lawyer painted Lisa as a gold digger who had been planning this deception from the beginning. In the end, the judge split the difference. He found that Lisa's adultery and financial misconduct warranted a less favorable settlement than she would have received otherwise. But he also noted that I had failed to notice or prevent the unauthorized account access, which suggested poor financial oversight on my part. Lisa got the house, 40% of my business assets, and alimony for 5 years instead of the half of everything she'd demanded. I got to keep my business and most of my retirement savings, but I also got a legal bill that ran into 6 figures and a reputation that would take years to rebuild. The day the divorce was finalized, I stood outside the courthouse, feeling like I'd won a war but lost myself in the process. Lisa and Daniel were across the street, holding hands and looking relieved that their ordeal was finally over. I realized then that they'd won, even in losing. They had each other, they had enough money to start their new life together, and they had the satisfaction of knowing they'd made me pay for forcing them to end their deception. All I had was the truth, and sometimes the truth is a cold comfort when you're standing alone in a courthouse parking lot wondering what to do with the rest of your life. The months after the divorce were the darkest period of my life. I was 65 years old, starting over from scratch, with a reputation that had been dragged through the mud and a bank account that had been cut in half. My business was struggling because clients were still wary of the domestic violence accusations, even though the charges had been dropped. I moved into a small apartment across town, taking only what I needed to start over. The house I'd shared with Lisa, the furniture we'd picked out together, the life we'd built over 25 years, all of that belonged to her now. Starting over at 65 felt like trying to climb a mountain when you're already exhausted. But I was determined not to let Lisa and Daniel's betrayal define the rest of my life. I'd spent 25 years living a lie, but I wasn't going to spend my remaining years wallowing in bitterness about it. The first thing I did was hire a financial advisor to help me rebuild what Lisa had taken. Sandra Williams was a Black woman about my age who'd built her own firm from nothing after her own difficult divorce 10 years earlier. "Mr. Travis," she said during our first meeting, "I've been following your case in the papers. I want you to know that not everyone believed those accusations." "Thank you. That means more than you know. Now, let's talk about rebuilding. You've got a good business, you're debt-free except for legal costs, and you're still young enough to recover from this setback. The question is, what do you want your life to look like in 10 years? This is a good question. For 25 years, I'd been building toward a future that included Lisa, retirement, maybe grandchildren, a life of shared memories and accumulated wealth. Now I was starting over with different goals. "I want financial security," I said. "But more than that, I want to know that my money is going towards something meaningful when I'm gone." What does meaningful look like to you? I thought about my own upbringing, about the community that had supported me, about the young Black men coming up now who face the same challenges I'd faced, but with fewer resources and support systems. Education, I said. Scholarships for kids who need a chance. Maybe mentorship programs. Business development loans for minority entrepreneurs. I want to give back to the community that made me who I am. Sandra smiled. Now, that's a goal worth working toward. We developed a plan. I would focus on rebuilding my business over the next 5 years, living modestly and saving aggressively. Then I would gradually transition toward retirement while establishing the charitable foundation that would become my legacy. The second thing I did was start seeing a therapist. Dr. James Morrison was a Black man in his 60s who specialized in helping people recover from betrayal trauma. I was resistant at first, thinking that therapy was something other people needed, not successful businessmen who could handle their own problems. "Ms. Travis," he said during our first session, "you've been through a war. Your wife and your best friend spent 25 years systematically dismantling your ability to trust your own perceptions. That kind of psychological warfare leaves scars that don't heal without help. He was right. I'd been walking around for months feeling like I couldn't trust my own judgment, like I was somehow responsible for not seeing what was happening right in front of me. The gaslighting had been so subtle, so consistent, that I'd started questioning everything I thought I knew about people and relationships. The goal isn't to become cynical, Dr. Morrison explained. The goal is to learn to trust yourself again while also developing better skills for recognizing deception. Over the next year, we worked through the anger, the embarrassment, the sense of betrayal that went deeper than just the affair. Lisa and Daniel hadn't just broken my heart, they'd stolen 25 years of my life, made me an unwitting participant in my own humiliation, and then threatened to destroy me when I finally discovered the truth. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Dr. Morrison told me. And it doesn't mean pretending that what they did was acceptable. Forgiveness means releasing the anger that's poisoning your own life. It took me 18 months to get to forgiveness, and even then, it wasn't the warm, fuzzy reconciliation that people talk about in movies. It was more like letting go of a heavy weight I'd been carrying around, choosing to stop letting their betrayal control my emotional state.
The third thing I did was rebuild my social life. The divorce had cost me most of our mutual friends who either believed Lisa's accusations or simply didn't want to get involved in the drama. I found myself isolated, lonely, spending too many evenings alone in my apartment, wondering if I'd ever trust anyone again. I started attending a men's support group at my church, a group for divorced men who were trying to rebuild their lives. The first meeting was awkward. I felt like everyone was looking at me as the guy who'd been accused of domestic violence. But gradually, I realized that everyone in that room had their own story of betrayal, disappointment, and loss. There was Robert, a 55-year-old teacher whose wife had left him for his brother. There was Michael, a 62-year-old electrician whose wife had emptied their joint accounts and disappeared with her personal trainer. There was James, a 58-year-old accountant whose wife had been having affairs for years while he was working overtime to pay for her expensive lifestyle. The thing about betrayal, Robert said one evening, is that it makes you feel like you're the only person stupid enough to fall for it. But look around this room. We're all good men who trusted the wrong people. That doesn't make us stupid. It makes us human. These men became my new support system, my chosen family of people who understood what it felt like to have your life blown up by someone you loved. We played cards on Friday nights, went to baseball games on weekends, and slowly rebuilt our ability to trust and enjoy friendships. The fourth thing I did was focus on my business. The domestic violence accusations had cost me about 40% of my clients, but the ones who stayed were loyal and understanding. I threw myself into work, taking on projects I might have declined before, traveling more, staying busy enough that I didn't have time to sit around feeling sorry for myself. My reputation slowly recovered as the truth about Lisa's false accusations became more widely known. New clients started calling, referrals started coming in, and my business grew stronger than it had ever been. It turned out that surviving a public scandal and coming out truthful on the other side was actually good for business in some circles. 3 years after the divorce, I was financially better off than I'd been during my marriage. My business was thriving, my investments were growing, and I had a clear plan for the future that didn't depend on anyone else's cooperation or loyalty. But more importantly, I'd regained my sense of self. I knew who I was, what I valued, and what I wanted from the rest of my life. The man who'd been blindsided by his wife's betrayal was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and more intentional about the relationships he formed. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Lisa and Daniel had married 6 months after our divorce was finalized. They moved to Florida, where Daniel took a job with a medical supply company, and Lisa became a stay-at-home wife. Apparently, the stress of the affair and the divorce proceedings had taken a toll on their relationship, and they were struggling to adjust to being together openly after years of secrecy. I felt nothing when I heard that news. No satisfaction, no bitterness, no lingering anger. They'd gotten what they wanted, and so had I. They had each other, and I had my freedom. The final step in my healing process was learning to date again. It took me 4 years to even consider it, 4 years to trust that I could recognize genuine interest versus manipulation, 4 years to believe that not every woman was looking for an opportunity to exploit me. I met Maria Santos at a charity event I was attending on behalf of my business. She was a 58-year-old nurse practitioner who'd been widowed 3 years earlier when her husband died of cancer. She was volunteering at the registration table, and something about her smile, her genuine warmth, caught my attention. "First time at one of these events?" she asked as she handed me my name tag. "Yes, and probably the last if I can't figure out how to pin this thing on without stabbing myself." She laughed and came around the table to help me with the name tag. "There, now you look properly charitable." We talked throughout the evening, and I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Maria wasn't performing for me, wasn't trying to impress me or manipulate me. She was just being herself, and herself was lovely. We started dating slowly, carefully. I was upfront about my divorce, about the false accusations, about my wariness when it came to relationships. She was patient with my caution, understanding about my need to take things one step at a time. "I'm not going anywhere, Henry," she told me one evening when I apologized for being slow to trust. "I've got all the time in the world." 6 months later, I knew I wanted to marry her, not because she completed me or because I couldn't live without her, but because she was a good woman who made my life better and who deserved to have her life made better in return. We married in a small ceremony 18 months ago, surrounded by the friends I'd made in my support group and the family that mattered to both of us. At 68, I was starting my second marriage with a completely different understanding of what partnership should look like. Maria knows about Lisa and Daniel, knows about the betrayal and the false accusations and the long road to recovery, but she doesn't treat me like a victim or a damaged man who needs to be handled carefully. She treats me like her equal, her partner, someone worthy of love and respect. Life lessons and growth. I'm 70 now, and I've spent the past 5 years learning lessons I wish I'd known when I was younger, not just about marriage and friendship, but about human nature, about trust, about the difference between being naive and being wise. The first lesson is about recognizing red flags. Looking back, there were signs from the very beginning that something wasn't right about Daniel and Lisa's relationship. The way they already seemed comfortable with each other when he introduced us, the inside jokes I didn't understand, the coordinated stories that always seemed a little too perfect. But I ignored those signs because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. I wanted to believe that I'd found the perfect woman and that my best friend was looking out for my happiness. I wanted to believe that good things happened to good people and that loyalty was always rewarded with loyalty. Trust but verify, Dr. Morrison taught me. It's not paranoia to pay attention to inconsistencies. It's wisdom. The second lesson is about the difference between love and convenience. Lisa didn't love me. She loved what I provided: security, stability, social status, financial comfort. But love requires honesty, respect, fidelity, and genuine care for the other person's well-being. What Lisa felt for me was appreciation for services rendered, not love. Real love, like what I have with Maria, doesn't require deception. Real love doesn't involve secret meetings and hidden agendas. Real love is transparent, honest, sometimes difficult, but always authentic. The third lesson is about the power of forgiveness, but not the kind of forgiveness people usually talk about. I didn't forgive Lisa and Daniel because they deserved it or because it was the Christian thing to do. I forgave them because carrying that anger was destroying my own life. Forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about me. It was about choosing to stop letting their betrayal control my emotional state. Stop giving them power over my peace of mind. Stop allowing their actions to define my future. The fourth lesson is about rebuilding. When your life gets destroyed, whether by betrayal or death or financial disaster or health problems, you have two choices. You can stay in the ruins and feel sorry for yourself, or you can start building something new. I chose to build something new, but I built it differently this time. Instead of building my identity around being someone's husband or someone's friend, I built it around being a man of integrity, someone who contributed to his community, someone who created value in the world. The business I rebuilt after the divorce is stronger than the one I lost. The relationships I've formed since then are healthier than the ones I had before. The marriage I have with Maria is more honest and fulfilling than my marriage to Lisa ever was. The fifth lesson is about the importance of community. During the darkest period after my divorce, the thing that saved me was finding other men who'd been through similar experiences. Not to sit around and complain about women or to feed each other's bitterness, but to support each other in rebuilding our lives. Robert, Michael, James, and I are still close friends 5 years later. We've watched each other remarry, start new businesses, overcome health scares, and navigate the challenges of getting older. We've become the kind of friends I thought Daniel was. But these friendships are based on honesty rather than deception. The sixth lesson is about legacy. When I was married to Lisa, I thought my legacy would be the family we'd build together, the children we raise, the grandchildren who carry on our name. When that dream died, I had to figure out what else my life could mean. The Travis Foundation, which I established 2 years ago, provides scholarships for promising students from low-income families and business development loans for minority entrepreneurs. Last year, we sent 8 kids to college and helped 5 people start their own businesses. Mr. Travis, one of our scholarship recipients, told me at our annual dinner, "You changed my life. I'm going to be a doctor because of this opportunity." That young man's success means more to me than anything I accomplished during my marriage to Lisa. It's a legacy built on truth rather than lies, on genuine care for others rather than self-interest. The seventh lesson is about gratitude. It sounds strange to say, I'm grateful for being betrayed by my wife and best friend, but in some ways I am. Not because I enjoyed the pain or because I think it was good for me, but because it forced me to become a better version of myself. The man I was at 43 was naive, trusting to a fault, willing to overlook red flags because he wanted to believe the best about people. The man I am at 70 is wiser, more discerning, better at recognizing authentic relationships and avoiding toxic ones. I'm grateful for Maria, who showed me what real love looks like. I'm grateful for my support group friends who show me what real friendship looks like. I'm grateful for my business success, which gave me the resources to make a difference in other people's lives. Most of all, I'm grateful for the strength I discovered in myself. When Lisa threatened to destroy my reputation with false accusations, I could have folded. I could have given her everything she wanted and slunk away quietly. Instead, I fought for the truth, even though it cost me financially and emotionally. That decision to fight, to refuse to be victimized quietly, changed everything about how I saw myself. I wasn't just Henry, the trusting husband, or Henry, the loyal friend anymore. I was Henry, the man who stood up for himself when it mattered most. The eighth lesson is about the difference between being alone and being lonely. For the first time in my adult life, I spent several years truly alone, not looking for a relationship or depending on anyone else for my emotional well-being. I learned to enjoy my own company, to find fulfillment in my work and my friendships without needing romantic validation. That solitude taught me that I didn't need to be married to be happy. When I met Maria, I chose to marry her not because I was lonely or desperate, but because she was an amazing woman who enhanced my already fulfilling life. The ninth lesson is about the importance of therapy and healing. As a black man of my generation, I was raised to believe that real men don't need help dealing with their problems, that therapy was for weak people who couldn't handle life on their own. Dr. Morrison taught me that seeking help is actually a sign of strength, a recognition that some problems are too complex to solve alone. The work we did together didn't just help me recover from Lisa's betrayal. It helped me understand patterns in my relationships, boundaries I needed to set, and red flags I needed to watch for. The 10th lesson is about the power of choice. For 25 years, I felt like a victim of circumstances, like things were happening to me rather than being chosen by me. Lisa was lying to me, Daniel was betraying me, and I was just along for the ride. But I always had choices, even when I didn't realize it. I could have investigated the inconsistencies in Lisa's stories earlier. I could have trusted my instincts when something felt wrong. I could have set better boundaries around our finances and our relationships. When I finally discovered the truth, I made the choice to fight for justice rather than accept quiet defeat. That choice was painful and expensive, but it was mine. Taking control of my response to their betrayal was the beginning of taking control of my life again. If you hear nothing else from me, remember this. Betrayal is not the end of your story. It's a painful chapter, sometimes a very long and difficult chapter, but it's not the end. You get to write the next chapter and the one after that and the one after that. You get to decide whether their betrayal makes you bitter or makes you wise. You get to decide whether you'll spend the rest of your life being a victim or being a survivor. You get to decide what kind of relationships you'll accept going forward and what kind of legacy you'll leave behind. Lisa and Daniel took 25 years of my life, half my money, and nearly my reputation. But they couldn't take my character, my determination, or my ability to start over. Those things belong to me, and no one can steal them unless I let them. These days, I spend my mornings on the back deck of the house Maria and I bought together, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper while she tends to her garden. It's a peaceful life, built on honesty and mutual respect, everything my first marriage wasn't. Sometimes I think about Lisa and Daniel, wonder how their marriage turned out, whether they ever think about the pain they caused or the life they destroyed. But those thoughts don't hurt anymore. They're just memories, like thinking about a movie I saw years ago that didn't have a happy ending. Last month, I got a letter forwarded through my lawyer. It was from Lisa, writing to tell me that Daniel had died of a heart attack 6 months earlier. She was alone now, struggling financially, and wondering if I might be willing to help her out for old time's sake. I know we didn't end things well, she wrote, but we did have some good years together. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive the past and help me through this difficult time. I read the letter twice, then handed it to Maria. What do you think? I asked. I think she's still trying to manipulate you, Maria said. Even now, even after all these years, she's trying to use your good nature against you. That's what I thought too. I wrote back a brief note expressing my condolences for her loss and wishing her well in her future endeavors. I didn't offer money, didn't offer help, didn't offer forgiveness or friendship or any opening for her to re-enter my life. Some bridges once burned should stay burned. 2 weeks ago, one of our scholarship recipients graduated from medical school. Dr. Patricia Williams, the first person in her family to attend college, much less medical school. She's going to practice family medicine in an underserved community in rural Georgia. Mr. Travis, she said at the graduation ceremony, I want you to know that everything I accomplish from now on is partly because of your investment in my future. You changed the trajectory of my family for generations. That evening, as Maria and I drove home from the graduation, I thought about legacy again, about the different ways a life can matter, the different ways a person can make a difference in the world. Lisa and Daniel's legacy is a trail of broken trust and damaged relationships. My legacy, I hope, will be young people like Patricia who go on to make the world better because someone believed in them when they needed it most. The Travis Foundation has now provided scholarships to 23 students and business loans to 12 entrepreneurs. We've helped create jobs, support families, and build communities. The money that Lisa tried to steal from me, the wealth that Daniel helped her hide, has been transformed into opportunities for people who deserve them. If this story hit home, share your own experience in the comments. Drop a line about a time when you had to choose between being a victim and being a survivor. Don't forget to subscribe and tell a brother who needs to hear that it's possible to rebuild after betrayal. This is His Stories Where Men Rise Above. Together. And remember, fellows, your worth is not determined by other people's ability to appreciate you. Your value is not measured by how well others treat you. You are not defined by the worst thing anyone has ever done to you. You are defined by how you respond when life tests you. You are measured by your ability to maintain your integrity when others abandon theirs. You are valued for the contribution you make to the world, not for your ability to tolerate mistreatment. At 70, I wake up every morning grateful for the second chance I've been given. Grateful for Maria, who loves me honestly. Grateful for real friends who stand by me truthfully. Grateful for meaningful work that makes a difference in people's lives. Most of all, I'm grateful for the strength I discovered in myself when everything fell apart. The strength to fight for the truth, even when it was expensive. The strength to start over, even when it seemed impossible. The strength to trust again, even after being betrayed. That strength was always there, waiting for the moment when I need it most. Yours is there too. When your moment comes, and it might already be here, remember that you're stronger than you think, more resilient than you know, and more valuable than anyone who mistreats you could ever understand. The best revenge against people who betray you is not bitterness or anger or attempts to hurt them back. The best revenge is building a life so good, so meaningful, so fulfilling that you genuinely thank God they're not part of it anymore. 27 years of friendship with Daniel and 25 years of marriage to Lisa taught me what love and loyalty aren't. 5 years of marriage to Maria and 5 years of real friendship with my support group brothers have taught me what they are. I wouldn't trade the wisdom for the pain, but I'm grateful I don't have to live with the pain anymore. I've learned what I needed to learn, helped who I needed to help, and built what I needed to build. The rest of my story is still being written one honest day at a time.